surrounding a book that Derek has just written called How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State, which is obviously a timely and important topic to be talking about. So it's an honor to have you back on the program, Derek. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, James, thanks for having me. It's always good. I think we've talked about everything you said there and the finders and so much more.
That's right. So I hope people will check out our previous conversations. If they haven't done so, I'll put the link in the show notes along with everything else that we talk about today, because some of these concepts are foundational and will be important to what we're talking about today. But let's start with the sort of big picture of this book, How to Opt Out of the Technocratic State. In short form, what is this book and why did you write it?
Well, so your viewers will be familiar with the term technocracy, and the state general, especially if they've listened to your interviews with Patrick Wood and others, describing the technocracy that we're seeing unfold here with things like the 5G smart grid and with biometrics and facial recognition scanning and just this whole push towards a smart world that we're seeing, especially in regards to the environmental disasters. This is a solution. So yeah, like you say, it's very timely. This is something that I am experiencing more and more every day, living in a big city like Houston out here in Texas in the U.S. We are one of the first places where 5G is rolling out. We have biometrics at the airports now, and just all of these things have been coming together. And for a while, I've been seeing that these events are kind of converging around 2020 and this coming decade, that so much of it is beginning this year, as well as other things like, I would say, the push for mandatory vaccinations also played into my thoughts in this book generally. And most of it just centers around the aspects of the state and government which uses technology and is trying to sort of force that on us. And whether that means coercively with a gun to the head or more subtly through things like social credit and social engineering, that I honestly don't have, as I say in the book, I don't have a whole lot of hope for moving past this stage. I don't think once these switches get turned on, it's going to be so easy as just, protesting the streets or just, repealing them and things like that. So I started to think in more practical terms of what it could look like to provide solutions to people who are, recognizing these same problems. Here we are recording on a Sunday. Just yesterday, there was a global protest against 5G and the smart grid all around the world. Lots of people are paying attention to this, and I think it's an appropriate theme for the moment. And I've tried to talk about that in a way that is, I think, unique, because it does touch on some of the things we touched on before, counter economics and others, but applying them in a way that I haven't seen before.
That's exactly right, and I want to commend you on that specifically in this book, because you do start with a section describing, for readers who may not know what it is, technocracy, and giving sort of succinct summary of it, but you spend the majority of the book and you go straight into essentially the solution side of this, which is refreshing, because yes, we know, the Corbett Report audience by now knows the problem and knows it in excruciating detail. That isn't so much the issue at this point. Once you are aware of the problem, what do you do about it? And I appreciate the way that you get into the heart of that matter quite quickly. So we will do the same in this conversation, except I'd just like to touch on one point before we do that. In your opening section on technocracy, you quote heavily from Zbigniew Brzezinski's Between Two Ages, America's Role in the Technotronic Era, a work that, again, I hope the Corbett Report audience is familiar with, and I've referenced numerous times myself. But in rereading some of the passages that you reproduce here, a couple of them really stuck out to me this time, although I've read them before, but it surprised me. For example, when he says, persisting social crisis, the emergence of a charismatic personality, and the exploitation of mass media to obtain public confidence would be the stepping stones in the piecemeal transformation of the United States into a highly controlled society. And another quote that stuck out to me, in the technotronic society, the trend seems to be toward aggregating the individual support of millions of unorganized citizens who are easily within the reach of magnetic and attractive personalities, and effectively exploiting the latest communication techniques to manipulate emotion and control reason. And those quotes jumped out at me specifically, because if you told me that Brzezinski wrote that in the year 2020, I would say, my God, he's communicating to us from beyond the grave. But beyond that, I would say that really does apply very much to what is happening right now in a way that it really could be ripped from the pages, the headlines of the daily news today. Talk about that aspect of it and the way technocracy has brought us to this point where control of the masses is really now, for the first time in human history, really and truly in the grasp of the dictators.
Yeah, absolutely. And I went through the Between Two Ages to sort of mine for quotes that, not just to find quotes that back up what I'm saying, but also to look at the full context. Because, of course, the globalists, for lack of a better term, they always frame their goals as they're doing it for the benefit of everybody. And he still tries to do that within there and say, we want to tackle climate disasters, we want to do all these things. But in order to do that, we need to have mass control of society and everything like that. So yeah, as I said, he calls it technotronic, technocratic. It really doesn't matter, I guess, which one you prefer. But at the end of the day, I believe he was describing the same exact plan that comes out of the technocracy movement, of the early 20th century, and even ideas that I would say somewhat existed before that as technology started evolving, right? And now we're at the point where digital technology, surveillance technology, again, the 5G smart grid, all of these things are kind of coming together at once. And we're already seeing it play out in China. Of course, it's really a great example when it comes to social credit, when it comes to denying people the ability to live as they please. And that's honestly, to me, the more worrisome aspect of it, because as you said, the dictators of the past only could dream that they would have this sort of technology where they could know what every citizen was doing at all times, and they could even, instead of having to send soldiers to come shoot them down or arrest them or beat them down, they just turn a little switch and drop some points on their score until they comply. And I really do fear for the point, that where we get to that point where even people who maybe follow our content and who know what's going on, but still for one reason or another, and I point to this in the book, say, well, sorry, buddy, but I got to take the kids on vacation next month, or sorry, but I can't hang out with you because otherwise I won't get that loan coming up. Like, there's so many different ways that they are starting to have the ability to socially engineer everything. And I don't watch much TV, but every time I'm near a TV, I hear this commercial promoting the smart grid, the technocracy. It's one of the insurance companies telling you how much your rates are going to be cheaper if you just let them. They don't tell you this, but if you just let them get access to everything in your car and track your location and your behavior and all this. So we're being sold it in so many different ways. This past Christmas season, 2019, for I think the second or third year, the hottest selling item were the home assistants, Google Home Assistants, things like that. So people are completely embracing this technology. They're rushing towards it. Every time I go to the gym, people got the Bluetooth headphones in, the latest trend. Anything that is trendy and coming up, people are accepting it, and then they're getting it through so many ways. And of course, we've seen this coming for years now. But I think the 2020s are really the point where we're going to see the full erection of this, what I'm calling technocratic state, and it coming into implementation. So